Okay, guys, let's talk about our album cover projects. These projects are really cool so far because everyone is doing something completely different. I know that when we were starting to use the tools and learning where everything is on Photoshop, I was showing you really step by step exactly how to start. But at this point, we have the basics, and you guys can kind of take your own creative freedom and do your own thing once you've done your sketch. With that being said, there are a few tools that I have not officially shown you that some of you have discovered on your own, which is awesome. But I want to go over those and show you those today, and all of the features with a few different tools. So let's look at the Smudge to start, and it's right over here. I think the default will have it looking like the blur tool, which will be a little raindrop icon here, and then if you click and hold, it will open up this menu where you will see sharpen and the smudge tool. Again, if you don't have these tools, you can always go down to the three dots and edit toolbar, and then you can find all of those tools and move them around as you need to. But the default should have the blur tool underneath the shapes that we always use, so that's pretty easy to find for you. Now, if I want to use the blur and the smudge, I kind of have them grouped together because they're similar, and I'll show you the difference here. So if I want to blur all of these colors and give it an effect, let's look at those two effects that I can add. So I have my blur on, and I'm going to click this check mark up here that says sample all layers. I'm going to make sure that that is checked so that I can have my blur on all of the layers. I'm going to go around this little highlight here on the heart that I included, and you can see that it's just softening those edges, gives it a different effect. And I can see that as I continue to go around that edge, it's softening more and more. It's definitely a gradual change and effect. But once I stop and I Control Z, which is undo, I can see that that was a big difference in that effect. So if I like that effect, I can go back and put that back in there. I can see the difference. Where's my smudge? There it is. And I can see the difference there if I have the blur on for the smudge or if I have it off. So I'm going to take that smudge off and I'll show you, or blur, I'm sorry, I keep mixing them up. That was the blur, now I'll show you the smudge. They are pretty similar. So again, I'm going to go up here, sample all layers, and for this one you can see it has more of a dragging effect. So I can go through all of my colors, go back and forth, and it drags them and moves them all around. This one really distorts my colors. So if I don't want that effect, be careful with how you distort your shapes and colors. Like the brush tool, you can use both of these. Let me make sure I undo that smudge because I don't want it. You can change the size of both of these tools just like the brush. So I can do a giant blur right here, really move everything around. I can change the hardness. So that one has a softer edge, as you can see here. So I can do a harder edge, or I can do kind of a stippled edge, a brush. So you can play around with these different effects here. You can see that blur has a texture that's really cool. That's an option for you as well. So these are some really fun textures you guys can play around with and add to your album cover. I'm going to take that off because I don't want to add that to my album cover, but it's always an option. Okay, one more thing that I wanted to show you in this video is an effect that I added to my letters, my text. So I'm going to go back to my text tool so that I can reselect the text. Text tool, select it. So I have this text selected. Make sure that if you select, or if you click with the cursor off of it, it might start a new text box, but I want to select the text that I already have previously. So I'm highlighting it, and it already has the layer highlighted automatically. And I actually have two layers here because I tried to do a drop shadow effect. So I'll show you that in a second. But what I did with the first layer, I believe it's this one, is I went up to this menu here and I just played around with the different effects that are automatically in Photoshop. And I think I chose the vivid light effect, which gave it that, if you can zoom in, you can see it's a little bit transparent. So it shows the shapes that I have in the background here, which I think is a really cool and different effect here. So it shows that. The font I have is actually what's giving it that 3D effect. So that's something that I also found. It's this font here, and it has that 3D effect. So I didn't actually draw that in. I found that font for me already in Photoshop, and then I gave it this vivid light effect. Then what I did with the title, because I didn't think it had enough, I added another layer, copy and pasted this entire layer, and added a little backdrop. And then this layer actually has another effect on it. Maybe did a little effect overboard, but I was playing around with these to see which one makes it stand out. And I clicked the linear burn, and it's right underneath or over this one. So it has a different transparency. I think it looks different. So those are some options for you when you're doing your title of your album cover and when you're creating your album. One more thing I want to mention is make sure your album cover is a square. So as you can see, I started with the default. That's why these dimensions are here, but then I added in the square later. So when I go in and I finish, I'm going to screenshot, not take a picture, of just the square. I'm going to cut out all of that. So it'll be, mine's a laptop, so it's different. It'll be print screen, and then I'm going to go in and edit out everything else except for this square. Just make sure your album cover is a square because that's the size that album covers are. And it'll be awesome. I'm so excited to see your guys' album covers. And let me know if you have any other questions in class, and we can go through any other tools